What is going down, SDS? We are back. Unfortunately, we aren't celebrating a Victory Monday today. However, we do got some news surrounding the San Francisco 49ers, so we'll get into that. We'll talk about this matchup against the Bears. Is there things to be concerned about, or is there light at the end of the tunnel? We're going to get into it right now. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Love to see it. What is going down, squad? How are we doing today on this interesting Monday, I guess we should say, after the 49ers drop game one against the Chicago Bears? How are we feeling? We feeling okay? Is the sting a little less harsh as it was last night? You had time to process. What are the vibes? How are we feeling? Obviously, wasn't the outcome that we were hoping for, but shout out all the SDS for hopping in. Probably do film tomorrow. I did watch the offense today, so I do have a much better feeling of what was going on with the 49ers offense as of yesterday. Definitely watched the offensive line, feel better about the offensive line. Wasn't a perfect performance, but overall, I felt like they did okay. And we'll get into that. We'll talk about it quite a bit. Justin says, still don't know why they didn't play Mason. Well, it does sound like the Mason could be playing here pretty shortly. It does sound like Mason could be playing here because, as you have heard, the reports came down today that Elijah Mitchell did suffer a pretty substantial knee injury against the Bears. So it does look like Elijah Mitchell will be out for 2 months as we kick off week 1. So this will be the second year in a row where the 49ers starting running back has gone down in week 1. So at least the timetable here isn't the entire season like Raheem Mostert was. With Elijah Mitchell, it does appear he will be out for, 2 weeks. That's a solid 8 games. The 49ers have a bye week on week 9. So based on that particular setup, it does feel like we could see Elijah Mitchell back week 10 against the Chargers. So that would definitely be something that the 49ers would be looking forward to. But in the meantime, who's going to step up? Because as you look at it right now, Ty Davis-Price was inactive against the Bears. You only had Jeff Wilson and Jordan Mason active. So it does look like moving forward, the San Francisco 49ers are going to be relying heavily on Jeff Wilson Jr. and undrafted free agent running back Jordan Mason for the, foreseeable future until Elijah Mitchell gets back. So we went into training camp, the San Francisco 49ers, looking at that running back room. We were like, oh my goodness, so much talent on this running back room. We're so deep at running back, right? Those were the conversations that we were having. The 49ers even kept 5 running backs on the active roster. Well, Trey Sermon gets released. He gets picked up by the Philadelphia Eagles. Elijah Mitchell goes down. So now the 49ers are only left currently with 3 running backs. I would imagine the 49ers are going to try to pick someone up from the free agent heap. And it's going to be interesting to see who that could be. I see people talking about David Johnson could be. I would look into bringing Marlon Mack especially with Marlon Mack being available. I think Marlon Mack is somewhat healthy, but we understand he's dealt with some injuries in his past, so it could be a little shaky. But I do like Marlon Mack, what he is able to provide. But it is going to be interesting to see what the 49ers do in this situation. Again, they are going to bring in someone. They're going to bring in someone. It's just a question of who it's going to be. So, not the news that we wanted to hear on this particular Monday after a loss, but it's how the cookie crumbled. And that's where we stand currently. Last night, there was some interesting news. There was some interesting news surrounding the Cowboys. Dak Prescott is going to be going in for surgery on his throwing hand. Dak Prescott looks to be out for 6 to 8 months. Do the 49ers maybe make a trade? Do they, because it's been heavily discussed at this point. When we look at Jimmy Garoppolo, the goal, at least from what we've heard from management, is they've been looking for trades. Nothing materialized. So I would assume at this current point that could still be something that's an option. I don't know. Um, I don't know how they feel internally. Maybe they feel comfortable with keeping Jimmy Garoppolo on the roster at this current point. Um, but it is going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. Obviously, the 49ers lost a tough one against the Bears yesterday, but it was just a weird circumstance considering the monsoon nature of the game. It's hard to really give a firm evaluation because I think when you look at both teams, there were breakdowns on both sides, but ultimately, the breakdowns on the side of the 49ers gave the Bears opportunities to score. And as a result, we saw the Chicago Bears basically outscore the 49ers 19-3 in the second half. So it is going to be interesting to see what the 49ers continue to do. But I think when we look back at that game, and, I think there's a lot of early concerns with the offensive line. I went back and I watched the offensive line. I'm going to watch it again, but I've already did one pass through with the coaches film. There were a couple bad plays. You had the McGlinchey sack, which is, much heavily discussed today on Twitter. What a shocker. And then, I feel like that's pretty much the main one when it comes to the offensive line. But other than that, if you look at the full body of work, it actually wasn't too bad. You had miscues, I think, from everyone up front. It was one of the first games where watching Trent Williams, he looked like a human. So that was rare. But all the things that we saw up front, whether it was some miscues with Aaron Banks, Brendel had a pretty clean game, wasn't perfect. Burford had a really clean game, wasn't perfect. McGlinchey wasn't perfect, but he also had some really nice plays in the run game, getting to second level and doing those types of things. So I really do believe that the 49ers offensive line, give them a couple games, because that's what we've talked about all year leading up to this game was you got to give these guys some time. They haven't had a whole lot of continuity up front. And if the 49ers can get through 3 or 4 games with this offensive line, I think we're going to start to see them progress as a unit and get better with more continued reps. So I don't think there's, again, considering the circumstances of the rain, McGlinchey coming back, having the bad knee, and really slippery footing, I think they did okay for the most part. Again, it wasn't perfect, but I think they did a lot better than it felt like in real time, which is also why I like to reserve my judgments of the offensive line until I go back and watch. So overall, nothing too concerning from the O-line. I would say probably if we have to, do a deep dive into the game yesterday and after rewatching and looking at all the plays and stacking them together, I could see a scenario where it felt like they got away from what was working in the first half. It felt like the first half, they had a pretty solid plan for moving the ball. They were doing a lot of misdirection and things like that. But at a certain point, felt like the Bears just made really good adjustments in the second half. And obviously, we understand what happened on the defensive side with the penalties on all three of those scoring drives, which was a huge difference in the game. But on the offensive side, it just felt like from a schematic standpoint, they just got away from what they were doing. I don't know the rhyme or reason. I'm not in that room, so I don't know what either the Bears were taking away or what was going on, but it definitely felt like they had a pretty decent rhythm considering the circumstances of, a fumble here, a sack on a third down that knocked them out of field goal range. Outside of those things, it felt like they were doing okay. But going into the second half, it felt way different. I don't know if that was a result of Elijah Mitchell going down. It could have been, but it just felt like it shifted. And again, that's what teams do at halftime. They make adjustments. And so it could have just been the Bears made the proper adjustments. Um, so we'll see, man. We'll see what happens with the offense. But also at the same time, I'm not ready to panic because I think what had happened yesterday, I was kind of prepared for because we talked about it. We didn't think the offense was going to be perfect going into week one. We didn't think, it was just going to be polished and look beautiful and, how it was looking down the stretch last year with the 49ers. We knew with the new interior offensive line, we knew with Trey Lance, we knew it was going to be a bit of a work in progress. So ultimately, I feel okay. Like I'm not concerned. I'm not in a situation where I think the 49ers are doomed on the year. I just think it was a really weird game with considering the elements, the game flow, and the penalties. The self-inflicted wounds didn't help anything. Um, Clean those up, you correct that, things get better, and the 49ers can get the ship headed in the right direction. So ultimately, I still need to watch the defense for 49ers versus Bears, but I think we know what the story of the defense was. It was just penalties. It was just penalties up until that point. So overall, I think the 49ers are still in good shape from this point out. I was just thinking about it. Would you guys be interested in Le'Veon Bell? I know I've been pretty outspoken about not wanting Le'Veon Bell, but I don't know what it was. Kind of seeing Le'Veon kind of knock out Adrian Peterson, I was like, maybe, maybe. We'll bring Le'Veon over. Hey, the 49ers submitted from my understanding, I could be wrong on the exact figure, but I think they gave him they presented Le'Veon with like a 38 million fully guaranteed contract when he was a free agent. So there was interest. The 49ers offered him a good amount of money. But what occurred at that point, Le'Veon Bell, and at this point, I didn't want Le'Veon Bell. I thought, holding out for the year and kind of the wrapping thing, I was just kind of over like Le'Veon, even though he's a great talent. At that time, he opted to sign with the Jets. And we know what happened there. He lost his job to Frank Gore, the inevitable truth. Or not the inevitable truth, the inconvenient truth, but also inevitable. Because when you got Frank Gore back there, you know what's going to happen. He's going to be as consistent as can be. So again, there's not a lot of options out there. There's really not. Adrian Peterson said he would want to play for the 49ers. Again, just something about seeing someone get knocked out in a boxing ring. I'm just like, I know it has nothing to do with football, but it just feels feels like I don't know. Don't love it. Adrian Peterson's I think 37. So we'll see what happens. But the 49ers are going to need to add additional running back depth. Based on what you guys saw out of Trey Lance, how are you guys feeling about Trey Lance at this point? Just want to get a sense for the chat. We got Facebook in here, we got YouTube in here. What do you guys? What's the vibe after we were able to sleep on the game against Week 1 versus the Bears? How are we feeling about Trey Lance, his performance? Again, understanding it is Week 1, um, and where he's currently at. Um, Mark says, I think he's talking about Lance. Mike says he's about what I thought he'd be. Max says Justin Fields is better, but both will be superstar. I mean, Justin Fields got an entire season to start. Harris says not bad. He was pretty good. He'll get better as the season goes. Optimistic. I don't think we've seen enough. Can't judge him after that game. He did some good things, did some bad things. Lance did pretty average, not too bad, but mistakes are expected. He's young. Jesus says, I think he did good considering it's his 4th start. I think it was actually his 3rd start. So it's 3rd start over a pretty long period of time. Mark says he did okay. Doesn't seem comfortable. That will get better. I agree. There were some plays that he was a little jittery. You could see he's getting a little spooked. I think there's that one play where he kind of had Jawan Jennings running a slant route, and he kind of threw it behind him a little bit. It was a particular play where Aaron Banks rode the defensive tackle kind of inside and out of the pocket. Lance kind of stepped up, but he jumped up into the pocket where he was basically he took the leverage away from Trent Williams that Trent Williams had in blocking Robert Quinn, and it put Robert Quinn with kind of like a direct angle at Trey, and Trey just kind of like I think he kind of got spooked a little bit, and he just kind of hopped up and threw it. But again, a lot of the things that I see from Trey Lance can all be cured with reps, and shocker, what have we talked about all offseason? We've talked about how he just needs some reps, and though that I'm not trying to make excuses. I know people will potentially say I am making excuses, but that weather is something. Both teams had to play in the rain. We get it, but considering it was his first start as the QB1, his 3rd start in the league so far. It was interesting. It's interesting circumstances to say the least. I thought he showed some good things. I think what he was able to show with his legs, extending plays, getting first downs, those are the things that we like to see, and the added elements to his game that we really like. We don't want him to be solely reliant on that, but it is a positive, and it's one of the reasons why we wanted a mobile quarterback at 3. I think once he continues to take that next stage of kind of protecting himself a little bit better, the running won't be as big of an issue. I think right now he still has that linebacker mentality, the kind of safety mentality. He likes to lower his shoulder and likes to get after it. I can respect that for sure. But I'm sure, as we all know, the best ability is availability, and we need Trey to be available. And he was taking some shots there at the end. Um, but the biggest thing with Trey is just patience, man. If we can continue to be patient and allow him these opportunities, I think he'll continue to grow from them. Brian says, "Sup, Brad? This is the first stream I've watched since the loss. Wanted to avoid all the toxic overreaction. Game two can't come soon enough." Yeah, you know the vibes, Brian. Uh, After a loss, especially under the current circumstances of the San Francisco 49ers, there's going to be some definite reactions, positives, most a lot of negative, but I don't think there's anything really that's overly concerning, as we've seen up until this point. And again, you guys can either agree or disagree with me. Um, but when I look at the game, when I look at how he performed, I felt like he performed pretty admirably. He performed like a guy starting his third career game in a monsoon. That's what he looked like. So it didn't look like, we were looking at just a horrid performance. I think he did a decent job. Obviously left some plays out on the field. Definitely wanted to get that play back to Croft. Um, but I like his thought process. I like the way he explained that play. I like the way he was, again, comes along with the maturation process, but the way he discussed his thought process of throwing and where to throw to Croft, again, it's just going to come with more experience. Once he throws that ball 100 times, he's not going to have to think about it anymore. It's going to be just a reaction. He's like, "Oh, my guy's open," and it becomes a muscle memory in a sense. But he's still got to develop and build that. So it's going to be some time. But that's what this season is for. Um, and the best part is it's a marathon. And, it's cliche, but it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And so there's still 16 more opportunities for the 49ers to continue to get better. And I've got faith in Kyle Shanahan. I got faith in the staff. I got faith that that game against Chicago is a little bit of a fluke. Again, you had the fumbles, you had the wet weather. They talked about how the ball got extremely heavy. Um, so there's some issues, but good opportunity. Good opportunity to get put in the fire right away. Why not? Why not get put in the fire right away? And let's see how they respond. Um, but we've been here before. Jason says fans been going nuts. Yeah, they went nuts last year too. It was pretty crazy when the 49ers went 0-4 against Green Bay, Seattle. Uh, they lost to the Cardinals, and then they lost to the Colts. We've been here, so we're gonna act like we've been here. Um, there could be a time this season when we take a step back and we're like, okay, maybe there are some like legitimate concerns that we can have an adult conversation about. But right now, I don't think that time has come. I think there's still plenty of optimism surrounding this team. I think even though Elijah Mitchell goes down, guess what? You still got Debo Samuel. Debo Samuel clearly was proved has proved that he's going to still be used quite heavily as that wide back role. So that is you're going to get those explosive plays there. Jeff Wilson was a little bit bottled up against the Bears, but I also think we're going to get some more opportunities from Jordan Mason. I think that will be a nice little shot in the arm to be able to get him out there because we know how hard he runs. He's a very physical runner and he's got very good cutting ability and he's got some speed. Uh, He's pretty nice. He's pretty nice. And then, of course, Kittle will be returning. That will definitely help. And just getting these guys up front some experience. Brendel, Burford, Banks weren't perfect, but body of work, not bad. And we'll do film breakdowns. We'll do film breakdowns. I'll break down the offensive line. I put some stuff out on Twitter today just to, you know, counteract some of the craziness that's going on about some of the 49ers offensive line. And I get it. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't pristine and picturesque, but they also allowed a lot of time and a lot of instances for the 49ers to be successful. But it takes everyone working together. If the offensive line is doing their job, uh, wide receivers got to get open. The 49ers only had 2 sacks on 28 pass attempts, and one of those sacks was a coverage sack. The only really just, I think, obscurely like, oh, that's a bad beat was the Mike McGlinchey beat where he got hand swiped and got beat to the inside by Dominique Robinson. I mean, at a certain point, just got to tip your cap to the guy on the other side. Now, do you want to see that not occur with Mike McGlinchey? Of course, 100%. But I can see what happened and why maybe it wasn't the outcome that we wanted. You have to think about it. Mike McGlinchey is having issues with his right knee, which is his plant foot. So his plant foot in his kick step, that is where you drive all of your power when someone is going on the inside. Not only that, but Dominique just took his hands and went like this, and it caused his shoulders to turn the opposite direction, and it was a good beat. I mean, it was a good rep by Robinson. Uh, really, really nice. So some of these chats are wild. Burford's gonna be so good, man. Burford's gonna be really good. Like, Burford wasn't perfect either. He wasn't perfect either, but he has the raw talent. Like, he just has the strength, the size, the speed, the movement ability. Burford's gonna be really good. Burford's gonna be really good. And he's already getting better. You're already seeing him improve some things, like going back to the Green Bay game in the preseason. He had one particular rep where he's helping with the center, but his eyes are looking at the tackle because if there's going to be an inside move on the tackle, he's going to be there to peel off the interior defensive lineman to help pick up the inside move on the tackle. He had a play where he was looking there, but his reaction time to actually pick it up was slow and it turned into a sack. Well, you had that same scenario play out in this game. He had interior guy on the center. Brendel had him, but he's lending a hand. His eyes are looking at McGlinchey. McGlinchey does a good job of kind of anchoring and stopping the rush, but the guy makes an inside move and Burford just jets over and stonewalls the interior pressure. That was actually a play that was a coverage sack on Trey Lance, where it looks like they could have been running a Texas route or a choice route out of the backfield to Kyle Juszczyk. You also had Jawan Jennings running looks like a shallow out towards the pylon. That could have been open, but when you really look at the tape, everything was covered. And Trey Lance ultimately just tucked it and it turned into a sack. I wouldn't put that on the offensive line. I would put that on as a coverage sack. So when we're looking at the offensive line, I saw the O-line give up 1 sack. It was the Mike McGlinchey play. Wasn't the best play, but you know, you can get better from that. You can improve on that. So also too, and we'll pull up examples of this. Aaron Banks having a little trouble getting to second level at the right time. I think he had 2 plays, that he lost the same way, where he's taking his angle to the second level, linebackers go underneath him and then make a play. That's a timing thing, that's something that he'll be able to it's correctable. That's the good part about it. Was it great? No, but it's correctable. So, I think that's one of my biggest takeaways of that game yesterday was it was sloppy, it wasn't the best, but all the things that we saw are correctable, and that's what you hope for. Like, if we came out of that game and we're like, "Oh, wow, this offensive line is atrocious." There's no hope. There's no correcting. It's just pure getting overpowered, uh, no technical acumen. It's just a sad story for the Fort. That's not what we're talking about. That's not what we're talking about. The offensive line actually did okay. Trey Lance did okay. So, and the things and issues where they had issues with are correctable. That's the best part about all this. It's the best part about all this. Is Hufanga Palomalu 2.0. I mean, he's making a case, man. He is making a case. I felt like it was appropriate that I had him as the 49ers hero of this offseason because that's exactly what it looked like he did yesterday. He was all over the place. Talanoa Hufanga um, was was nice. That boy nice. He definitely got that dog in him, and all the other things that you want to say. Uh, Talanoa was pretty damn solid. So I really liked what I saw out of Hufanga. I think that's about on par with what I was expecting because he's such a cerebral player. He knows where to put himself and be in position to make plays. Um, and his athleticism looked better. I got to see how he fared in coverage overall because I haven't watched the defense yet. But we can at least speak to him from a run defending standpoint or anything that was in front of him standpoint. Absolutely, absolutely incredible. He did really, really dang good, and I was really, really happy about it. Jerry Rice even said, traded enough for us to win, but did criticize the interception. Definitely can't do that in that situation. Yeah, and I went back and I watched the interception, and he had mentioned in the post game that he thought he held, the robber with his eyes enough to keep him away from whoever was slanting across. I can't remember exactly who it was. Was it Jawan? I don't know. But when I went back and watched it, it really didn't look like he either sold because I think you have to overcompensate. He kept his eyes in the middle of the field, which kind of it pulled the safety over a little bit, but then he immediately went and locked in on the slant. And right when he did that, Eddie Jackson just undercut it. It was a really good play by the safety, but again, that comes with, eye manipulation for a quarterback. Maybe take a little bit more extended look to the right, get that Robert creeping over an extra, 2, 3, 4 yards. That's enough to get the window open, and then you snap back and come back and hit that slant. Um, Again, we already know football's a game of inches, and right now Trey Lance is in that kind of business of he's figuring out the inches that he needs to work. So I think that's correctable. But yeah, it wasn't phenomenal. We talked about this a little bit, Jesse. Um, Again, so I'll preface we talked about the 49ers only giving up 2 sacks on the day. One of the sacks was a coverage sack in my opinion. And the one egregious sack was on Mike McGlinchey. Definitely wasn't his best rep, clearly, and he got beat pretty good. Definitely got to tip my cap to Dominique for stemming up upfield. He did like this little jump swipe, hit Mike perfectly in the arm, caused his shoulders to turn, and beat him to the inside. It was a great move. Um, so in that regard, you know, yeah, Mike probably would have wanted that one back. Definitely wasn't something that was great, but it's correctable. Um, you got to be better and without keeping your hands out there too much for a swipe to come. But other than that, if you go back and you watch the rest of the game, he played pretty well. He had a couple really nice pancakes on the second level. He held up well in pass protection for the most part. Um, and then, wasn't perfect on the day, but you know, I could, I Trent struggled a little bit. He had a game where he didn't look like his normal self. Um, I saw a lot of people talking about this. Little Strange helping Lance up. I think it was just a situation where Mike knew, I've talked to Mike a couple times. I think Mike is his own biggest critic, and I don't think it was more so an indictment on uh it was an indictment on Trey Lance because, none of the offensive linemen really helped him up, but also too the way Trey Lance got tackled, he wasn't on his back. He got tackled like onto and he was like already on one knee. So it's like the only thing that you could do in that particular point if you're an offensive lineman is grab him by his shoulder pads, which is awkward as well. So I don't know. I thought it was. I noticed it as well when I was watching it. How he kind of ran off the field. I felt like him running off the field was like him, like, damn it, you know, like on himself. I feel like he was being hard on himself. That's how I interpreted his body language. I've seen people interpreting like it was something about Trey, like, oh, if that was Jimmy, he would have helped them up. And I'm like, I don't think that had anything to do with it. I think the reason why Mike McGlinchey sprinted off the field is because that was 100% a sack on him in a third down situation that potentially took points off the board. He knew it was a bad beat, and he's just like shit. He's just like, it's like, damn it. It's like, I'm just got to get off this field. I really don't think it was an indictment on Trey. I felt like it was more of an internal thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, some guys, you make a mistake, you internalize it. I think Mike's one of those guys. I think if he makes a mistake, he'll kind of internalize it a little bit. But that's the way I viewed it. Him sprinting off the field was just like, damn, I gave up a unfavorable play in a moment that potentially took some points off the board. I didn't really see it as like any type of indictment on Lance or like him intentionally not doing it. Uh, because I've seen plenty of times, where Mike's been there to help Lance up. Go back to Arizona game. He definitely helped him up a couple times, and things like that. So I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think it's Twitter kind of taking on a life of its own, and I get the different thought processes. I could see why someone would look at it and be like, why aren't you helping up your quarterback? Again, I'm an offensive lineman. You're pre-wired to make sure your offensive lineman doesn't get hit, and if he does get hit, you pick him up. That's typically how it goes. But just didn't happen in that particular instance. I don't know. I'm not really looking uh that big into it because I don't think Mike is that kind of guy. Um, but you already know people are going to have their own interpretations on what they think it is. It's all right. Um, Again, I just think it was one of those ones where Mike was like, "I wish I had that one back. Wish I had that one back." Um, Trent also didn't pick up Trey in that sequence. Brendel didn't. Burford didn't. Tight end didn't. Running back didn't. I don't know. I mean, we can assume. Doesn't mean we know the intent behind it. And everything I know about Mike McGlinchey is I don't think there's any ill intent involved. So I think it's a little bit more about nothing. I think again, it was more just Mike knew he got beat, wasn't happy with the outcome of the play, and it was just kind of like an internal mechanism to be like, all right, got to sprint off this field. Let me get out of here. So uh I'll do definitely a much more precise film breakdown. I threw out some clips on Twitter. Um because I don't think it's as bad as everyone's making it seem for everyone um in that regard. So we'll figure it out. Um Thoughts on the running back situation? We talked about it a little bit. I imagine they're going to bring someone in. Oh, I saw this one. You see that the Bears found a tell on Trent Williams from film. I mean, you guys already know. Like we've broken down the double pass set move. Like if you watch enough film on Trent, you can absolutely like I saw a play where you know how on the backside of runs he does like the club, like he'll club down and try to pull. One of the defenders knew that's what he was going to do, and he just kind of swam him, and Trent fell. I was like, oh, I was like, that's rare. Like we don't see that. We don't see that very often. But just so you guys know, Trent probably had his best game of his career against the Bears last year against Robert Quinn. He made Robert Quinn look like a fool last year. So they definitely the tape that they had from last year, Trey showed the double pass set. He showed the backside club snatch. He showed the baited hands. He unloaded the clip last year against Chicago. So I'm not surprised that Chicago found a tell because he killed them last year. Absolutely killed them. And you could see they knew what was coming. They knew on those particular Trent's expecting them to try to cut off, to the inside when he takes a hard step down. And so that's when he'll initiate the club snatch. They were ready for it. They like took a step in and then like swam opposite direction, and he took a tumble. I was like, oh, he knew what was coming. He knew it was coming. So hey, that's what film's for, man. That's why we watch the tape. That's exactly what you do. So they were prepared to play Trent. They were definitely prepared to play Trent. Um, the tell that Dominique had on Trent was that he would shake his leg twice on pass plays. Oh, that's a good. I know what you're talking about. I know exactly what you're talking about because he does a really good job of kind of having his toe, so his heel is up. Some offensive linemen will kind of have their whole foot on the ground. I know exactly what you're talking about. He'll have his toes up and he'll do this tweak thing. So that's interesting. They shouldn't have said anything because now I would imagine Trent's gonna be aware of that, and he's gonna try to take that out of his game. But I know exactly what you're talking about. I'll actually try to I'll look for that, when we do some film breakdowns. I'll definitely look for that. Um, because I know what you're talking about, but I've never associated it with a pass blocking move, so that's fire. That is a good tell. Shout out Dominique. Hey, 49ers were interested in Dominique, man. They were. They were interested in him. I was not gonna be shocked at all if they drafted him. I saw him at the combine up close and personal. That dude is huge. Uh, and he's like a converted wide receiver. Um, so he's an athlete, man. I know people are like, "Oh, fifth round, defensive line." Dude's a converted wide receiver. Like he is an athlete. That's huge, long arms, and clearly is smart. So Dominique's good, man. I guarantee you're going to hear that name uh, for a while with the Bears. So I know it might seem like, oh, just a rookie. Like just wait. He is a high upside prospect. He's raw as hell, but clearly showing he's got some of the tools and intangibles for sure. Um, definitely got some of the tools and intangibles. Didn't realize that was going to be Dante Pettis' revenge game. That game had a little bit of everything, didn't it? That game just had a little bit of everything for us 49er fans. Mm. Uh, but again, I can't say it enough. The 49ers beat themselves before they beat anyone else. You look at the Aquinius St. Brown touchdown. He literally just got lost in the wash. It was a hard play action sell. He was blocking, and then he released, and there was no one there to pick him up. You had the linebackers bite hard on the run fake to the right. He was blocking, and then he released and got in between the safety and the linebacker, and Fields found him for a touchdown. So it's just one of those plays. Uh, that's correctable, just being more heads up on where that particular guy is on a play action to ensure that they don't get behind you and get lost in that situation. So I'm excited for what the 49ers look like next week. I think we'll have a lot better uh, opinions and situations, definable situations against the Seahawks, who actually played tonight. So the 49ers have an opportunity to, although they did lose to an NFC team in Chicago, but the rest of the NFC West lost yesterday. And it looks like Seattle is going to lose today because they're playing against the Broncos. So there's an opportunity that the entire NFC West loses the opening game, their opening game of the year, which leaves everyone in the NFC West even. Like, hey, nothing happened. The 49ers go into next week. They have an opportunity to knock out Seattle, jump them in the standings. Um, again, was it ideal? No. Is it time to hit the panic button? Absolutely not. Even with, the current injuries that the 49ers have, I still feel like they'll be able to overcome it. Uh, the Elijah Mitchell injury does suck for sure, for a lack of a better word. But I really do think that Jeff Wilson will have a better day. I think Jordan Mason's going to provide a spark. I feel it in my bones. I feel like this is the Jordan Mason year. It's really just everything is kind of positioning itself to look like Jordan Mason could be a big time factor in this year's plan for the 49ers. So we'll see, man. We will see. What is my take on Greenlaw's play? Uh, you know, wasn't my favorite. I feel like ever since he's kind of returned from injury, I think he got hurt. He got hurt in that week 1 game against Detroit last year, and ever since he's kind of came back, he feels like he's a little reckless. He's a great athlete. He plays really well in space, and he can really close in on a ball carrier. But he feels a little reckless recently. I don't know what that's about. I don't know if that's just eagerness. I don't know if he's just super hyped up to make some plays. But he definitely does feel a little bit over aggressive in some certain situations, kind of gets himself into bad spots sometimes. You misses some tackles here or there. We'll see. We'll see how see if he kind of settles down and gets more comfortable. He definitely played more snaps than Aziz against the Bears. I got Jordan Mason pretty much everywhere. I grabbed Jordan Mason in June in one of my dynasty leagues. I grabbed him early. Bears did find out he was only throwing to the left side. Proof was in the fourth quarter, through 3rd and 5 pick. Lance threw. Again, you got to credit the Bears and their staff. They made some adjustments, and it's apparent on tape. They made adjustments at halftime, and the 49ers, I don't know if they were ready to make counter adjustments. But it did feel like the Bears made some adjustments at halftime. And I don't know if that, because you could see, the 49ers would run their kind of misdirection where it looks like zone left or outside zone left. You even have Kyle Juszczyk taking his zone footwork to the left, but you know how he cuts back across the formation and it's almost like a counter zone play. They knew it was coming. They had the linebackers immediately roll with Kyle Juszczyk. Like, they did not bite at all, and they were ready to go. And they just had numbers at the point of attack. So I think that's good tape for the 49ers because they're going to be able to see the adjustments that other teams are clearly going to make against them. That tape's for everyone to ingest. So guarantee you Seattle is going to be watching that tape, watching the second half, kind of seeing that third quarter and some of the adjustments that the Bears defense made. And they're going to be looking at that and they're going to be like, oh, there's something here. So it's going to be on, Kyle and his offensive staff to continue to adjust and build out his game plan and make counter adjustments to, some of the things that the defenses do. So again, I think it's just too early to really panic as of now. I don't think we saw the true San Francisco 49ers yesterday. I think there are a lot of reasons why we didn't. We don't have to go through them again. I think, as we've discussed all offseason, more reps, more opportunities creates more continuity. And they're going to start clicking, but it's going to take time. It might not all come together against Seattle. We could still see some continual growing pains. But again, that's okay if we're not making silly penalties that are extending drives for the opposing offense. We're not turning over the football. Those are the keys. Those are the keys to victory. We talked about it. No turnovers. They controlled the clock. They ran the football. They ran the football a lot, and they still weren't able to win the football game because of penalties and because they didn't maintain the ball. They turned it over. So they're halfway there, but if they can correct those things, correct the turnovers, correct the penalties, I don't see why this team won't be good, right? So it was just a weird game. Trap game. Any given Sunday. I try to remind people as much as I can about trap games. You know what I mean? Like, trap games exist. I had the game, I think, at 17-10. Didn't feel like it was just an absolute foregone conclusion that the 49ers were going to just walk in there and just absolutely demolish the Bears. But because, again, some of the reasons that we talked about, flying to Chicago, 10 a.m. start time in the Midwest, the rain, Trey Lance's first game, offensive lines, kind of really first game as a new unit. You always know there's going to be some learning curves along the way. So all par for the course. Trey Lance gets another opportunity against Seattle with that offense, with Kyle Shanahan, because it's a unit, man. It's not on one person. It's not on one person. It's not on one group. That was a team loss against the Bears, but in regards to it being a team loss, all the reasons why they lost are all ultimately correctable. They didn't get overmatched. They weren't overpowered. None of those things. Everything that they did was a lot of it was self-inflicted. So they'll get it together. They'll get it corrected. And we'll figure it out. Do I think Hamler is a good play tonight with Russ? Hamler's their third wide receiver. It could be. I don't know what your other options are. Obviously you have Courtland and Judy. But they did, in a sense, it wasn't too bad. But I still maintain the belief that there's plenty to learn and correct, for sure. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, because maybe you get a little Tyler Lockett vibes from Hamler with Russ. I don't know. It's hard to tell. We don't really know yet. But I'll be back with more film. Stay tuned on the channel. I'm going to be dropping some film clips. Again, if you want to go watch every snap from Trey Lance, I posted that on the page. So you can go look at that and kind of see start to finish every throw, every run from Trey Lance, how it looked in the beginning, how it looked later. I'll be doing some more offensive line breakdowns. Then we'll transition into some of the defensive breakdowns and do all those types of things. And we'll continue to break down this game, and then pretty soon we are going to transition and turn the page to week 2. Seattle is on the brain. Keep your heads up, faithful. Again, you don't have to take my word for it. You really, really don't. But for what it's worth, I do feel comfortable with where the 49ers are at this stage. We'll continue to see how it all progresses. But right now, I'm not worried. And I think everything will get corrected in due time. Appreciate everyone, as always. Smash that like button on your way out. Hit that sub button if you haven't already. If you're watching on Facebook, come watch on YouTube. It's fun, I promise. But I appreciate you guys. I'm out of here. Peace. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Love to see it.